More than $1 million. That is exactly what is sitting on the table right now for anyone, anywhere, who has a shred of information about the disappearance of Nancy Guthrie. $1.2 million? To be exact, and yet nobody has called, not one single person. What I found out about why the phones aren't ringing might honestly be the most disturbing part of this entire case. Let's back up for a second. Nancy Guthrie has been missing for 65 agonizing days. She was taken directly from her own home in the dead of night. The scene left behind was chilling. Blood on the floor, doors propped wide open, and the doorbell camera literally ripped off the wall. To make matters even more desperate, Nancy is an 84-year-old woman in poor health who was taken without her life-saving medication. And her heart pacemaker has stopped syncing. Since that horrific night, her desperate daughter, Savannah Guthrie, has put up $1 million for anyone who can bring her mother home. The FBI added $100,000 to the pot. And then, an attorney from Wisconsin named Michael Huppy stepped in and added another $100,000 of his entirely own money. That brings the staggering total to over $1.2 million. And still, absolute silence. Think about that for a second. $1.2 million? And not a single person has picked up the phone to offer a tip that led anywhere. Not one name, not one location, not one piece of useful information. In almost every kidnapping case in history, a reward of this immense size breaks things wide open within a matter of days. Somebody always talks, somebody slips up, or somebody simply wants the cash badly enough to take the enormous risk. But 65 days into this nightmare, nobody has made that call. That is simply not normal. And the experts who study these crimes for a living are finally starting to explain why. But before we dive into the theories, I need to tell you about Michael Huppy, because his approach is wildly different from Savannah's or the FBI's. Huppy is the president of Crime Stoppers Milwaukee, a man who has paid out $75,000 in rewards before and posted $200,000 to solve crimes in his own hometown. He puts his own money on the line when he believes justice needs to happen. But here is the detail that changes absolutely everything. Huppy isn't just offering a massive stack of cash, he is specifically telling people where to call, and it's not the police. He publicly stated, "Avoid the bickering and avoid the nonsense and call Crime Stoppers." He is actively telling the public not to call the Pima County Sheriff's Department and not to call the FBI tip line. Think about what that heavily implies about the state of this investigation. The person funding a massive chunk of the reward does not trust the authorities running the case. Crime Stoppers is not a government agency and is not subject to Freedom of Information laws. When you call them, they don't ask for your name, they simply give you a secure code number, and if your tip leads to an arrest, you collect the reward using only that code. No identity, no record. It is true, untraceable anonymity. Huppy believes this extreme level of secrecy is exactly what is needed, because the people who know something are utterly terrified, afraid of being identified, afraid of violent retaliation, and afraid of what the mastermind will do to them if they talk. If you've been following this twisted case and want to know exactly what happens next, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications, because this story is far from over. Now, here is the part that literally kept me up last night. A true crime podcaster named Josh Diaz went on the interview room and introduced a theory that completely reframes the entire investigation. He stated that whoever is involved in this abduction is ride or die together. But they aren't bound by loyalty, they are bound by mutual exposure. Diaz believes there are 2 to 3 suspects involved, not strangers who met online, but a coordinated unit of people who knew each other and planned this together. They cannot turn on each other, because doing so means turning on themselves. If one of them walks into a police station to claim the $1.2 million and says, "Oh, I know who did it," the very first question the cops will ask is, "How do you know?" The only honest answer to that question immediately puts the informant in a jail cell right next to the person they are trying to turn in. Anyone who knows enough to collect the reward knows enough to be charged as a direct accomplice. For these individuals, the reward might as well not even exist, because claiming it is basically a signed confession. However, retired FBI Special Agent Maureen O'Connell sees things very differently. She stated clearly that if there were more than 2 people involved, someone would have gone for the money by now. Her exact assessment is that the financial incentive is simply too colossal, and human nature should have cracked the silence. $1.2 million is life-changing money. It's enough to completely disappear and start over somewhere where nobody knows your name. It's enough to make the risk seem worth it. But it hasn't happened once in 65 days, and that glaring contradiction is what makes this case so incredibly haunting. If human nature dictates that someone should have talked, but nobody has, then something much stronger than money is keeping their mouths shut. So, is it loyalty? Is it the fear of prison? Or is it something else entirely? Because there is a third theory, and I have to warn you, it is by far the darkest one. Kurt Dabb, a retired homicide detective from Pima County who knows exactly what desperation looks like in this jurisdiction, dropped a bombshell. His theory is that the accomplices might not be staying silent by choice. They might be silent because they physically cannot speak anymore. Dabb said it directly. It wouldn't be too hard for the ruthless leader of this group to make the decision to take out his partners. Let that horrifying thought sink in for a moment. If the mastermind behind this crime was cold-blooded enough to break into an 84-year-old woman's home in the dead of night, drag her out past a trail of blood, systematically disable every security camera on the street, and vanish without a single trace, what on earth would stop them from tying up loose ends? And the accomplices are the ultimate loose ends. They are the only ones who could pick up a phone, punch in a Crime Stoppers code, and walk out over $1 million richer. They are the biggest, most dangerous threat to whoever planned this. If the mastermind is as highly calculated as the evidence suggests, leaving those living threats alive would be the one fatal mistake they simply wouldn't make. Maybe the real reason nobody has come forward isn't because they won't, but because they can't, not anymore. Legal expert Bobby Tagavi perfectly laid out the psychology behind this deafening silence, connecting all 3 of these theories. He noted that rewards do not magically eliminate fear. People worry about brutal retaliation, being dragged into a media circus, or exposing themselves to unrelated legal troubles. Fear is the thick, dark thread running through every single explanation. Whether it's the fear of self-incrimination, fear of the ruthless people involved, or fear of what has already happened to those who knew too much, every theory leads back to the exact same place. Someone is terrified. The only question left is whether that fear is keeping them quietly hiding in the shadows, or whether it has already silenced them permanently. Now, let me connect all of this to the hard facts we already know. A neighbor named Aldine Meister told investigators she explicitly saw 2 to 3 people involved in the kidnapping, not just a lone wolf. Someone made 3 separate reconnaissance visits to Nancy's home back in January just to study the property. A highly illegal Wi-Fi jammer was deployed to meticulously disable every single camera in the surrounding area. The back doors were deliberately propped open from the inside, and a masked suspect was caught on a surviving doorbell camera carrying a heavy, full backpack. This wasn't a random act of violence. This wasn't a sloppy break-in gone wrong. And it certainly wasn't impulsive. This was a sinister operation planned down to the very last minute, by professionals who knew exactly what they were doing. These are people who studied the victim's house for weeks, knew exactly which security systems to blind, and knew exactly when Nancy would be vulnerable and alone. And now, 65 days later, with over $1 million sitting untouched on the table, every single one of them has remained like a ghost. That tells you everything you need to know about how dangerously organized these people are, and what extreme lengths they are willing to go to protect themselves. And tragically, it might tell you exactly what has already happened to the ones who could have talked. The question I keep coming back to, the one that I honestly cannot shake no matter how many times I review this evidence, is this. If someone slid $1.2 million in cold, hard cash across the table to you, offering it in exchange for just a few words, what would it possibly take to make you walk away? Is it a twisted, unbreakable sense of loyalty to the mastermind who orchestrated this nightmare? Is it a paralyzing, suffocating fear of retaliation that keeps you looking over your shoulder every single day? Or is it the terrifying, ultimate reality that you simply no longer have a voice to speak at all? I want you to drop down into the comments right now and tell me what you think. Do you believe the psychological pressure will eventually become too much, causing someone to finally crack and claim that life-changing reward? Or do you think the window of opportunity has already slammed shut forever? 65 days is an agonizingly long time for a family to wait for answers. And a silence this deep, this absolute, doesn't just happen by accident. It is deliberately manufactured. But even the most calculated criminals leave footprints. If you missed our previous breakdown on the massive, most glaring mistake these kidnappers made with Bitcoin, the exact digital breadcrumb that the FBI is tracking right this very second, you need to click the video on your screen right now. That single detail changes absolutely everything we know about this investigation. Click here and let's keep digging.